Rauda, and welcome to the Nation Update. We're coming to you live at 2 p.m. It is Friday, the 24th of September. You may be catching this over the weekend as well, and so a little bit of a blast from the past. Joining me, of course, is Nordin Abdullah, Crisis Communications and Management Analyst, to weigh in from that perspective on many of the headlining trending topics and news pieces this week. Hi, Nordin. How is it going? We're finally at the end of the week, another week before we close October, and then it's back to normalcy, according to the authorities.
It is looking like, the light at the end of the tunnel, and things are getting a little bit exciting for those who are returning, either returning to work, returning to play, and, sports is starting to look like it's, things are going to get back into normal there. So a lot to look forward to for a lot of people going into next month.
That's right. We talk about normal. I mean, initially it was adapting and embracing the new norm. And now when we try to, on beach shores, on the water, we obviously still haven't let go of that normal, quote unquote, part of our behavior, Nordin.
Exactly. And I think this is part of the maturing process that we need to go through as a nation. And I think this is where we need to redefine our future. Do we want to define our future as a group of people who throw rubbish on pristine, beautiful beaches and somehow call that enjoying nature? We can't enjoy nature by destroying it for the next people. So it's great to see that the people are getting back to Langkawi. What we do need to do is not destroy Langkawi in a mad rush to enjoy it.
Absolutely. We talk about the global reset, a national reset, looking at things through a new or fresh lens. And so, here's a lesson for all. Let's preserve our environment. We've given it a break. All these tourist sites and these wonderful places that we loved to go and we enjoy going to, let's really try and preserve that as well. Let's approach all these perhaps habits that we have with new lens. But let's get right into what we have on the table today. Let's start with, of course, what's been happening at the Parliament. A lot of different announcements coming out the entire week as well. We know that this will also go on for another week or so. But here's what the Prime Minister had announced earlier on in the week. He said that interstate travel and tourism will all be A-OK once 90% of adults in the country have been vaccinated. So this includes things like spas and zoos and scuba diving, aquariums, and all of that. So what's your perspective, though, as we resume to normalcy and we get back out there? What are some things to keep in mind, bearing in mind as well that we're still in crisis, Nordin?
We are definitely still in the middle of a crisis. And if anyone thinks that it's over, and if you think that it's time to relax, drop the mask or drop your guard, as it were, it's going to lead to trouble. So while we're allowed to do certain things, we need to enjoy responsibly. And it comes back to what we were talking about when it came to Langkawi. We need to have learned our lessons. If we don't learn our lessons, then we will be doomed to repeat them. And I think this is one of the things that we want to see when it comes to enjoying responsibly. And enjoying responsibly now means, yes, you wear your mask. Yes, you follow your SOPs. And also you take care of the community around you. And part of that community reality is the environment. So we've got an opportunity, got to take advantage of it.
That's right. Grab it by the horns, quite literally. Talking about SOPs, the National Recovery Council Chairman Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin earlier this week as well said that there will be a review on SOPs on economic sectors opening up and flexibilities around that as well as the country moves into a COVID-19 endemic phase. So we are phasing out of the pandemic sort of label and title, and we're moving into an endemic phase. With that also comes, some reviews of the SOPs and some relaxations as well. But on the brink of all of that, I want to bring up one other, sort of important topic that we need to approach as well, and that is the 12th Malaysia Plan. We know that this will also be discussed as early as Monday in the coming week. But what Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin also reiterated is that the 12th Malaysia Plan, Nordin, should really take into consideration the different various forms of support from the aspects of government as well as private sectors, so that not just economic but social sectors can also continue to be open in their phases as well.
Exactly, Jessy. And I think this is one of the things that when we look at the challenge of delivering now the 12th Malaysia Plan, we're talking about a 2-year hiatus around what was happening economically. So we've got that problem to deal with. But the global economy has shifted. The global reality has shifted. We need to move and move a lot faster in the digital realm. Digital infrastructure, access to digital data for a lot of people, access to, and we were looking at here at SME Bank and Bank Negara, access to funds to allow people to digitize their business needs to be ramped up at a very rapid pace so that we can take advantage of the economic upshift that is going to happen in the next few months, in the next few years. If we don't do that, we will be left behind by our regional neighbors in ASEAN who are ahead of us at the moment in terms of digitization. We need to use this opportunity to catch up and bring the entire country into the new digital era post-COVID-19.
All right, so you are of the opinion, and it's your outlook that the 12th Malaysia Plan really has to focus on the digitalization of our people and of businesses as well. But I just want to say that perhaps in summary, it's also quite clear that this plan must hit the ground running. Whatever phases or initial stages as one would ease into the 12th Malaysia Plan, it just seems that all that needs to be ramped up. It needs to be accelerated. What we know at this point is that the 12th Malaysia Plan will focus on the people's welfare, social security, social protection, and people-centered projects. All this, of course, in light of the crisis that we're going through. So it will also, Nordin, address poverty and will include issues like the income gap as well as the rural and urban poor, very much B40 on the ground issues as well.
Exactly. And before we get to all those exciting areas, what we need to look at is as what is going to be the key empowerer to that all those key elements of the plan is, one, this digital rollout, but two is the digitalization of government. One of the biggest suppliers of services in the country is the government. One of the biggest problems that we saw during this pandemic was people had to still physically go to, and you see it here, go and get lined up to do certain things. So when you have to do that, you actually become very inefficient. So you have to remove inefficiency so that you can move to productivity. With those gains in productivity and digitalization, you'll be able to afford all these social reforms that you want to roll out, all the social programs that you want to deliver, all the changes to the healthcare system. So while we talk a big game in terms of delivering for the people, it's going to be this triad of the people, the government, and the business sectors working together to deliver a new reality for the economy.
Fantastic. Just because you said that, the people, the government, and businesses, I'd like to bring in what the finance minister said earlier this week as well at Parliament. Tengku Zafrul mentioned that there will be a development in financial institution fund known as DFIs, Development Financial Institutions. Now, they will provide micro SMEs with financing, and that total is a figure that is hovering at about 8.1 billion ringgit. That's a huge sum. Now, this will be implemented via various different schemes through Bank Negara Malaysia's very own funds, and will be offered to entrepreneurs by facilitating loans through various soft loan packages. Interesting to note as well that many micro SMEs did mushroom up in the past 1 year or so. So this is going to help keep them not just afloat, but also boost them into perhaps some supersonic power ahead in the next few years, Nordin.
Exactly. And one of the things that we've seen was this pandemic has generated a new type of business. And it's my hope that these micro development loans, these micro development grants, focus on those SMEs and those micro SMEs that have the best chance of surviving in the new digital reality and who are crisis resilient. And with those two things, you will start to develop a more vibrant SME business sector. So the money that the government allocates, which is a huge number, 8.1 billion ringgit, gets pumped into that sector. What we're seeing is it's kind of a venture capital or a social venture capital approach, where you say, look, this is the money we're going to put into these companies. This is the money we're going to put into these ideas. make sure that they're geared up to have the best possible chance of survival and best possible chance of thriving. And that is what will grow the economy. And again, it comes back to being resilient with productivity that allows that extra production to deliver the tax revenues for the government, the export revenues for the government, that then allows for that extra money to be spilled over and spent into the social sectors.
That's right. So once again, as we make these efforts, and there's a lot of sort of on the ground movement as well to get us towards that point of normalcy, and then back out into the big wide ocean, so to say. This week as well, the Ministry of Education has reassured that every child has the right to education, which means schools will be opening soon. That is given a tentative or sort of a general date of October 3rd. But they will not refuse children entry to school, even if the parents have chosen not to get them vaccinated. This is a reassurance given by the ministry and the Minister of Education as well.
Yes, I think this is an important move. The vaccine is not compulsory. Of course, those who didn't get vaccinated are benefiting from the 90% of people who did go and get vaccinated. So in a sense, that's the 90% protecting the 10% who didn't get that thing done. But at the same time, you can't have a two-tier system for any of your citizens because that's a recipe for disaster. So allowing those all students into the ni ada cikgu cakap pun. So I think this is the challenge that we are faced with. The government needs to make policy that allows for the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people in the fastest and most effective amount of time. So allowing all those students in.
Nordin, that is the utilitarian principle for the greater good. But speaking of which as well, the ministry has been quite sound to have also targeted 3.2 million teenagers between the ages of 12 and 17. They will be getting their vaccination soon. What we know from that figure as well is that 400 teenagers or those in that category have been vaccinated already. And so furthering that, and for those who are resuming school, they can walk into any PPV. In fact, there's 156 across the nation. They can walk in via a scheduled walk-in process to get vaccinated. So again, there's that flexibility given to teenagers aged between 12 to 17. So yet another step towards helping to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Yes, and one of my youngest daughter actually, she's sitting in one of those centers literally right now, and she just got her vaccine, and she'll be going back to school next month. So this is the process that's going on. I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of talk amongst her friends. I noticed that they were all scheduling their vaccinations so that they could get a chance to say hi to each other at the vaccination center. So a lot of excitement. I think a lot of children are very excited to return back to school. At the same time, I think there's also a nice trend in terms of blended education with some online as well as in-person education. But the reality is you can't go 100% online because of the digitalization gap. So we need to, again, look at the reality on the ground. The government is doing that. They are looking at what's happening, and they are making informed decisions based on the data. So that is how you need to deal with a crisis. And I think getting people back to school is one important step that we need to take to move on from this crisis.
Absolutely. You speak of decision, and I want to bring up what else was addressed at the Parliament last week or just this week past. That is the anti-sexual harassment bill. NGOs have been lobbying for this for a long time, and now it will be tabled in Parliament as soon as possible. What we know from Rina Harun is that 9,015 domestic violence cases have been reported during this entire duration of the pandemic. And in a latest survey as well, Nordin, it showed that over 2 in 3 women say that they must, or rather, the gauntlet of sexual harassment, runs every day in a woman or Malaysian woman's life as well. So again, a very important time for all of this coming together in terms of coming to surface, coming up to light, to be addressed via the anti-sexual harassment bill. Finally, there will be more enforcement around this as well.
This is one of, again, this is a step of Malaysia becoming a world-class country. Anti-sexual harassment is a global thing that has been moved, for the last 20, 30 years. Malaysia is getting to the point where it's no longer acceptable. It was never acceptable, but now the law is catching up to the social reality. So I think this is where women are at risk, highly at risk. Of course, some men are also at risk. And we've seen certain cases of that, in the workplace over the last few years. But reality is you've got to remove this from the workplace. Why? You need to be productive. If you are worried about being sexually harassed in the office, are you getting your job done properly? The answer is no. So when you want to have an economic recovery, you have to have all of your workers, all of your workforce working at the rate that is best possible for them to deliver as much as possible. So if they're worried about being sexually harassed, it's not going to happen. So wonderful move from the government, wonderful move from the minister. Getting this through Parliament is the next step. And I don't imagine there's going to be any resistance from this bill. And I think voters would punish anyone who doesn't support this bill.
No, absolutely. And I love how you're using the best words for me to hook into the next topic. And that is, there has been no resistance, which is also through at the Dewan Rakyat Minister in the Prime Minister's Department of Parliament and Law, Datuk Seri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tunku Jaafar. He said earlier this week as well that the government has decided to go ahead with the implementation of Undi 18 and the automatic voter registration by year end. That is, of course, a date given that will be the latest. So we can expect that to be happening anytime between now and the end of the year. This was an order as well that was released by the Kuching High Court. So a sweeping progressive move as well. Again, even the youth have been talking about this. Social media is a buzz about this, and it does bring a sense of a new wave of Malaysians and what they will want for the country moving forward.
Yes, and again, you want young people to be involved in the country's future. You want young people to be involved in the economic future and the social future. Bringing in Undi 18 is making sure that they're part of the political future of the country. And I think this is why, when the bill passed in Parliament, it was unanimous. So I think getting it done by the end of the year is the latest. And I think this is going to be an important step for the country, which will be celebrated for years to come.
That's right. While we're all out and about celebrating, being able to go out again and having our vaccination and showing off our digital certificate, the Home Ministry has basically, or rather the Health Minister has said that 500,000 vaccination certificate complaints that were lodged in the recent past, all of that has been resolved. So, we're seeing that the minister and his ministry are very much on the pulse, looking closely to resolve any issues and handle that amount of complaints. That's quite a big number, 500,000.
Exactly, and this is one thing that I'm very excited about what YB Khairi is doing with the Ministry of Health. This approach to open data, open government, and ensuring that these things are dealt with. So now if you want to go and check, you can go and say, hey, show me the data, and data is available. So whenever you see this kind of stuff happening from the Ministry of Health, from Khairi's initiatives, I think this is the future of resilience. This is the future of dealing with a crisis. Why? Because you're giving people the transparency that they need. So they know that the issue's been solved and they can check the data. They themselves can, and then they will be advocates to show that the government has delivered. So this is actually the future of open government, and it's a difficult journey to go through. It's a change in thinking, but it's a revolutionary change in thinking that is incredibly important for dealing with future crises that we're going to face globally and moving forward.
That's right. We'll come to moving forward and what's happening globally as well when we talk about the AUKUS in just a short while. That is a trilateral security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. It was just announced just under 10 days ago. But I want to just bring your attention back to the fact that the government has said that they are committed to study all factors in lowering the price of COVID-19 self-test kits. Over this weekend, in fact, I'm meeting up with some family members, and we had sort of an SOP ourselves in place that everyone needed to do a self-test, and it had to be negative for us to be able to meet up. So, it's become part of what we do on a regular basis, especially if we're going to go out for a big conference or meet up with family or go for a wedding perhaps. And so it's really important that this price is kept as low as possible.
I agree. Keep it low, keep it affordable, keep the volume there. We still need to address one gap in terms of will people report whether they're negative or positive, on the self kits. That's one issue that does need to be addressed. But the question moving forward is, it's a community response. People are able to be part of it themselves. So therefore, they're more likely to be involved in the solution. So when you do that, you actually start to solve a problem in a very different way. And that's why we're seeing this new approach to crisis management, which is starting to move away from kind of the old model of telling you what to do and expecting you to do it, as opposed to now where we're going into this model of, okay, let's participate in this solution together. And I think that's really the future of crisis management.
That's right. In a very positive note as well, in terms of it being the driver's seat, that the people can do have that amount of freedom and flexibility to take charge of the situation. And really, at the end of the day, the onus is on us. I say this quite a bit on the program as well, that we really need to do our part. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening globally as well. Malaysia also, somewhat involved here. Now, Malaysia is saying that they will seek China's views on AUKUS, as ASEAN countries say they fear nuclear, the fact of the arms race and so on and so forth. So what we know from AUKUS is that the United States and the United Kingdom have agreed to help Australia to develop and deploy nuclear-powered submarines. Nordin.
Well, actually, they're not going to develop the submarines. I think Australia is going to purchase those submarines. So a lot of that discussion has been very exciting over the last 10 days. Of course, Malaysia and Australia have incredibly good bilateral ties, both on the diplomatic and military levels. And Australian troops have served in Malaysia over the last several decades. But when it comes to Australia's capabilities, I think with the fact that Malaysia is part of a Five Forces defense agreement together with Australia, Malaysia will actually benefit from access to improved capability from Australia. Having said that, of course, Australia has plenty of work to do in terms of engaging with their partners in ASEAN to ensure that it's part of the broader security requirements of ASEAN. Many of the countries have very large coastlines. Many of the countries have issues with dealing with piracy and these kind of defense issues in the region. So I think this is one area that Australia will always be committed to dealing with ASEAN in a fair and equitable way as a partner.
So as a result from this as well, we know that France and the US, they are seeking out to mend their rift, but also the US has said that they are ruling out adding other countries like India or even Japan to the pact.
Yes, I think the relationship between Australia, the US, and UK goes back hundreds of years, and in terms of defense cooperation, it's gone back past two world wars, and even before that. But the reality is, it's not about creating a huge amount of arms in the region. Australia has 3 oceans to patrol. The Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, as well as the Southern Ocean, and with over 30,000 kilometers of coastline. And this is just 8 submarines. So we're talking about Australia has quite a relatively small navy in comparison to a lot of the navies in the region. So in terms of engagement with ASEAN, though, I think Australia needs to continue down that path of engagement and being part of the partnership of increasing regional security. And I think Australia will always remain committed to regional security.
What are your thoughts to some experts referring to this pack as a toothless tiger, perhaps a paper tiger? They say that it is nothing more than an ineffectual and it will not be able to withstand any challenges.
Well, I think military action is really the last action that we want to see in Southeast Asia or the South China Sea. So what we want to see is diplomatic efforts being effective. But at the same time, countries, all countries, whether it's Malaysia or Australia or other partners around the region, need to have the capability to patrol their own waters, to patrol their own borders. So
Right,
this is
Nordin,
more
I'm
about
jumping in right here because I've just got the cue that we do not have much time. We'll have to catch up with you over a cup of coffee, perhaps at a local, coffee outlet. Can't even mention any names on air now, but I just want to bring your attention as well to what's been trending on Twitter. Sinovac, there's been many tweets regarding the effectiveness of Sinovac vaccine. This has been widely talked about on Twitter based on the release of vaccine data by the health ministry as well. Also in Myanmar, there have been many talks regarding two young girls being abducted by terrorists in the country alongside with dictatorship protests. That's been flooding over Twitter as well. Now in technology, Bitcoin, there's been lots of tweets about Twitter launching Bitcoin tipping feature for iOS and Android devices. This is also being widely discussed on the platform. And from Hollywood, Johnny Depp, people have been tweeting about Johnny Depp regarding his recent commentary on the cancel culture and its severity. So lots happening in and around the country. Thanks for weighing in on some of the really important issues here as well, Nordin. I'm going to catch you during the coming week. Have a wonderful weekend. And to all viewers, take care of yourselves, stay home, stay safe, and we will see you soon.